happens when a man known for never backing down suddenly finds himself outmaneuvered. At a private fundraiser, Donald Trump called Barack Obama a fraud. And just 17 seconds later, Obama's legal team fired back with a $100 million lawsuit that's now shaking the country. The room wasn't packed with cameras, no press pool, no reporters scribbling notes in the corner. It was supposed to be a closed-door fundraiser at a hotel ballroom in Scottsdale, Arizona. The chandeliers glowed gold, the carpet looked freshly vacuumed, and the tables were lined with glossy pamphlets and half-finished plates of steak and asparagus. For those who managed to get an invitation, it felt like another evening where Donald Trump would take the stage and fire off familiar lines to a crowd that already adored him. But then, something different happened. A cell phone caught it, just a 19-second clip, grainy, shaky, the kind you'd scroll past on Twitter until the audio makes you stop. Trump, holding the microphone with one hand and waving the other, leaned forward and said it. A sentence aimed squarely at Barack Obama, delivered with that mix of smirk and sneer he's become known for. Barack was the worst thing that ever happened to this country. A total fraud. Everybody knows it. He should be in jail. The crowd laughed. Some clapped. Others stood to cheer. But the clip cut off there, leaving only the echo of Trump's words bouncing around the internet. By morning, the hashtag was everywhere. Millions of people had already watched it, dissected it, reshared it, turned it into memes and sound bites. And then, 17 seconds later, Barack Obama's team dropped a bomb. Not a tweet, not a press release begging for respect, a legal filing, a $100 million defamation lawsuit against Donald Trump, time-stamped and signed. It felt impossible. The clip hadn't even finished bouncing from phone to phone, and yet here was Obama's legal team, moving with precision as if they'd been standing by with their finger on the trigger. The timing made people stop in their tracks. Commentators on cable news couldn't believe it. Was it even real? How had they acted so quickly? In Dallas, one radio host muttered on air, "This isn't a reaction, this is a trap. Obama's been waiting for this." Inside living rooms across the country, the conversation shifted. People leaned over dinner tables and asked their families, "Did you see this? Did you hear what Obama just did?" Suddenly, the story wasn't about Trump's insult. It was about Obama's response. And here's where things got interesting. The footage spread further, but so did the sense that something larger was in play. It wasn't just one man taking offense at another. It was a question of truth, power, and the cost of reckless words in public life. At a diner in Oklahoma City, a man named Robert Lane pushed his coffee aside and told a reporter, "Look, I didn't vote for Obama, never liked his politics, but if you can just say anything about someone, call them a fraud, call them a criminal with no proof, then what's left? Words matter." His friend across the booth, shaking his head, replied, "Yeah, but Trump's always said stuff like that. Why is this one different?" And that was the spark. That was the moment when people realized something wasn't business as usual, because this wasn't a tweet war. This wasn't two ex-presidents lobbing insults from safe distance. This was legal, paperwork, judges, real consequences. The more the story grew, the more people leaned in. Some were fascinated by Obama's speed, how ready his team seemed. Others speculated that maybe this was the plan all along. Let Trump talk until he crossed the line too far, and then hit back with a lawsuit that couldn't be brushed off. In Phoenix, a young law student named Elena Marquez was interviewed outside her campus. She smiled nervously and said, "It's kind of brilliant. They waited for the perfect moment. They knew he couldn't resist. And the second he said it, they had the documents ready. It's not just about money. It's about proving that lies have a price." For years, Trump and Obama had been locked in a strange orbit, two men from different worlds whose names kept colliding in American politics. But this moment, this exchange, felt different. It was sharp, immediate, and charged with the weight of something bigger than a feud. And as the clip kept circulating, as the lawsuit headlines rolled across every channel, the question wasn't just who would win in court. It was what this fight said about America itself, about accountability, about the way leaders use their words, and about whether truth still had any standing in the public square. But the real shock came next, when Obama's legal team revealed just how far ahead they had been planning this move. The lawsuit wasn't some vague threat tossed around on television. It was real, it was filed, and the timing was so exact that people didn't know whether to call it strategy or destiny. The Scottsdale fundraiser clip had just begun its journey online when reporters in Washington received the official document, Barack Obama versus Donald J. Trump. Claim, defamation, damages sought, $100 million. The figure itself was enough to make jaws drop. $100 million. It wasn't pocket change, even for someone used to headline-grabbing numbers. It carried a message. This wasn't about irritation or pride. This was about impact. Trump had accused a former president of being a criminal and a fraud in front of an audience, on video, for political gain. And Obama wasn't going to let it slide. In Philadelphia, MSNBC's early morning panel went quiet for several seconds after reading the first page live on air. Then one commentator, a former federal prosecutor, said bluntly, "This is surgical. They didn't scramble this together. They were waiting. This is Obama saying, enough." Across the country, people were glued to their phones. Social feeds lit up with the PDF of the complaint, screenshots of signatures, excerpts where Obama's lawyers laid out their argument with calm, pointed language. It wasn't angry. It wasn't petty. It was cold, precise, like a chess master moving a piece he'd been holding back for months. And then came the statement. Standing outside the Dirksen Federal Building in Chicago, Obama's attorney, Michael Reynolds, addressed a wall of microphones. He wore a dark navy suit, no flashy tie, just a clipped tone that echoed through every network carrying the feed live. Words have weight. When a former president uses his platform to spread falsehoods about another former president with intent to damage reputation and mislead the public, that is not politics. It is defamation. We have filed this lawsuit to hold Mr. Trump accountable for his repeated lies, and we will see this case through in court. The reporters shouted questions, but Reynolds only gave one more line. This isn't about settling personal scores. This is about the truth. That sentence landed like a punch. In living rooms, barbershops, and offices, people repeated it. This is about the truth. For Obama's supporters, it was a rallying cry. For skeptics, it was at least a moment to pause. Meanwhile, Trump's fundraiser clip was being rewatched in slow motion, dissected frame by frame. His words weren't vague, they were specific. A fraud. Should be in jail. Legal experts explained why that mattered. Those were direct accusations of criminal conduct without evidence said to a crowd in a public forum. Exactly the kind of statement that could be considered defamatory. But there was something else. Something that made the story even more electric. Reporters soon learned that the filing had been prepared days earlier. In fact, one journalist from the Arizona Republic claimed a contact in Obama's circle told them the documents were finalized more than 2 weeks before the Scottsdale event, which meant Obama's team hadn't just reacted, they had anticipated. They knew Trump couldn't resist taking another shot, and they built their case in advance, waiting for the spark. At a coffee shop in Albuquerque, 2 women argued over it while scrolling through their phones. "He walked right into it," said Lisa Turner, sipping her latte. "They baited him without even baiting him, just waited." Her friend shook her head. "No, he baited himself. He always says stuff like that. They just finally called his bluff." And that was the conversation happening everywhere. Was this strategy or inevitability? Either way, it didn't matter. The lawsuit was filed, the statement was public, and the country was watching. In Phoenix, CNN captured footage of a group of law students huddled in the campus library, reading the complaint aloud like a script. One of them, a first-year student named Jordan LeClaire, leaned back in his chair and said, "This is going to be in textbooks one day. Not about the money, not even about Trump. It's about whether words have limits when you're a leader." Meanwhile, Trump's allies tried to laugh it off. One surrogate on Fox News said, "This is ridiculous. It's just another witch hunt. Another way for Obama to stay in the headlines." But even as he spoke, the host interrupted. "But this is an actual lawsuit. This isn't politics. This is court." And that interruption, that tiny pause, shifted the energy. For the first time in years, it wasn't Trump setting the narrative. It was Obama. And the contrasts between the grainy video of Trump making jokes in a hotel ballroom and the sharp, professional filing of Obama's legal team couldn't have been clearer. But if people thought the filing itself was shocking, they hadn't yet seen the depth of planning that went into it, or the way Obama's inner circle had been preparing for months behind closed doors. By the time the lawsuit made its way across every news ticker in America, people started asking the same question. How could Obama's team have been so fast? You don't file $100 million case in the time it takes to pour a cup of coffee.